God, it was so funny. And then he puts him back in and he's like, there's a good boy. And don't f up or I'm going to come and get you.
Yeah, there's a good lad. Welcome to the What's Our Verdict TV podcast, where we fashion ourselves television judge and jury. My name is JJ Crowder. I'm here with my co-host, Mattson.
Better red than dead.
And our returning guest host, Casey Ridge.
Sorry for the swears.
And if you haven't already, please hit that follow or subscribe button. Tell a friend about us. It helps us grow the podcast. Today, we are reviewing episodes 5 through 8 of the Amazon original series, The Boys, as a conclusion to our last week's episode. So you should go check that one out if you haven't listened. That we did the first 4 episodes of the show last week. So as a reminder, The Boys was released in 2019. Starred Carl Urban, Jack Quaid, Anthony Starr, Aaron Moriarty, Laz Alonso, Tomer Capone, and Dominique McKelligot. So let's just jump right in. The start of episode 5, isn't it? When the Deep steals the dolphin, isn't that the first thing that you see?
Didn't he steal it at the end of episode 4, and then it starts with the news story about how it died?
Yeah, you're right,
dude.
So stupid.
Yeah, and then they flash forward to him in the van. He's got the dolphin rigged up in a harness situation, and some truck comes or something, or the cops start chasing because he's speeding, right?
Yeah.
And then he gets to a stop sign or a T, and then he has to slam on his brakes for some reason. And then the dolphin goes through the windshield and then is kind of flopping around on the street. And then a semi runs over it. And so the outtake from the news is the Deep sitting there in this pitiful ball crying over this dead dolphin, which was the one good thing he tried to do in his entire superhero, career.
So bad. So bad. So that's the start of his comeuppance, as you might say, for sure, is now he's in the crosshairs of this bad publicity getting started right out the gate. So pretty bonkers.
Casey, how did you feel about that? Because I remember we did Tiger King. If I remember correctly, I feel like you're definitely an animal lover. I mean, I am too.
Oh, yeah. I like animals more than humans on any occasion, and I don't care about what animal it is.
How were you feeling for that dolphin?
Oh, it hurt my heart, especially since they were talking to each other, and it broke my heart a little bit, but it's no worse than the lobster.
Yeah, which later on.
The lobster. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he tries to save the lobster.
Didn't the dolphin talk about something about stick it in his blowhole or something? Or am I just making that up? Or
no, yeah, and that's I think part of what they were trying to do is make it so that it wasn't so distressing when the dolphin so they made this this sexually predator dolphin that wanted him to
you're what?
Have sex with his blowhole. I'm like, oh my God, this show is so twisted.
Is it bad that only endeared the dolphin more to me?
It's not surprising. How about that? Yeah, it was so uncomfortable. When he starts, he's like, we can't do that now. I'm like, what the fuck am I watching right now? So everything about his character is disturbing, if I'm being honest, though. All of the interactions that he has are just uncomfortable. But yeah,
yes.
So great way to start off this second half of our review with episode 5 and the crazy dolphin. And then from there we cut to, this is where they go to, what's that Christian revival thing called? Yeah. The Believe Expo. So we did talk about last time where Hughie bugs Starlight's phone and then gets himself into the expo so that they can, because they figured out that the Compound V is being transported through that nonprofit of that superhero that runs it. And I cannot remember his name. Ezekiel.
He is a superhero.
Yeah, he's the stretchy guy.
Yeah, he was the stretchy guy in the first episode that in some private club, right? He was getting head from from somebody. And then he stretches himself across to the other side of the room to go give 2 guys some handies.
Yes.
Right? That was him?
Yep, that's him. That's Hughie's first. So your first introduction to how really bad these people are is you see Hughie walking through there and Butcher's telling him, he's like, is that Ezekiel? As he's stretching across the room. Isn't he anti-gay and Christian and whatnot? And they're like, yep, welcome to the party, pal. It was just, yeah. So yeah, that's exactly how you meet Ezekiel, and that is him.
Craziness. Well, something I wanted to bring up, because at the end of our last episode, Casey brought up about how we hadn't focused on Starlight too much as we got into other stuff at the end, but Starlight brings this episode off with a bang. because this is where she kind of comes clean about having to put on the face for corporate at Vought, and they're telling her to be this and that, wear this and that and all that, and she basically just came up from what I remember. It said, I'm tired, you guys can accept me for me, from now on I'm gonna just make my own decisions. And I thought her speech was very refreshing, especially in light of how with, what is it, Hughie, right? When he asked for tickets to that whole expo and he came off kind of fake, and she was like, oh, now he's just another groupie. Is he really my friend? And that all kind of came to a head in her speech. And that was really interesting because, I mean, that was pretty bold because it's trying to imagine myself doing that with my employer, just basically saying like, F you, I'm going to do what I want. And she did it anyways.
Well, that's when she outs the fact that she was assaulted, right? One of my teammates stuck his dick in my face or whatever it was. Yeah.
Because she wasn't talking to, I mean, she was talking to the crowd, but, and this is the part that you guys may not understand. This was a daughter talking to mom. Because she tells her mom,
I forgot about that.
I don't want to do this. Like, you've got to get me out of this. And her mom has always put like the fame and whatever else above her daughter. So, you know, she's sitting there going, I don't want to do this. And then she starts reading the teleprompter with the speech that they want her to say. And then she looks at her mom and she's like, you know what? Fuck this. Like, I'm done. I'm done putting up with the shit. And then she says it in the best way possible, where she's like, tell that to the guy who stuck his dick in my face. You're not wrong. Like, she does it in such you cheer for her and you want her to do well. And then it cuts to Elizabeth Shue sitting in the corporate office going, fuck. We know who did it. But she loses her shit and she's just like, you know what? Fuck everybody else. I am who I am. Believe in what you want to believe in. It doesn't have to be this. And it's the first time that you can really celebrate and see what that goody two-shoes superhero really should be.
Well, and then I love too that during this speech, the Deep is watching and he's eating Cheetos. He's all depressed and shit after the dolphin dies. And he sees this speech, and the only thing you get is a close up on his face. And he's like, oh shit. Because he knows he's already just fucked up. And now you compound it with this revelation, and he knows they're going to know who it is. And so he just has this panic attack before he gets sent off to Cedar Point,
Sandusky, Ohio.
Is it bad when I heard the word Sandusky? JJ, you know right where I'm going with this. I thought of Penn State, and I'm like, I wonder if there was a reason they sent him to Sandusky to make me think about those other I don't know. It just made me think about that unfortunate circumstance with the football team and the coach.
Yeah, it is unfortunate that his last name is shared with that particular city in Ohio. No, the reason they sent him is because the Great Lakes are right there. Sandusky's right on Lake Erie. That's where, like I said, that's why Cedar Point is there, because Cedar Point's literally right on the shore of Lake Erie.
Well, and it's somewhere he's not going to get in trouble, right? He gets $75 a day, and he fills his cart full of junk food. And then they're like, yeah, you might do some appearances. And if you ever want to swim, the Great Lakes are right here. But we don't really see a lot of crime because they just have to keep his face out and name out of the headlines.
Yeah, we're not living in a shithole like Akron. And we used to live too, not far from Akron, but I grew up just south of Akron. So that line always makes me laugh. We're not a shithole like Akron.
LeBron James is from Akron, right?
He is. Very familiar with that area.
Well, the episode continues on where they find the babies.
Yeah, because what's his face? Hughie again pulls out of his ass the ability to he uses, even though his video's not working because he gets baptized and his phone's in his pocket. I was like, oh, what a shitty thing to have happen to him. But he uses that video and really gets Ezekiel in a tight spot saying, you fucked me. We were in a club. So he used that and he just on his toes. Hughie is a genius. And so he finds out that they've been using it to turn kids. This is where you officially find out that all superheroes are created, not born. And so that's when, Butcher goes to the hospital with
the best weapon ever.
Who is it that they cut somebody in half with the baby?
Yeah. So because they get in and they're stealing they have to get the compound V. They find it. Yeah. They figure out that they're doing babies because all these babies are in incubators and one of them opens its eyes while it's sleeping and lasers come out. So security comes up on him and he grabs the baby and holds the baby face forward, like up in the air, and he uses the baby as a fucking weapon.
It's awesome.
It's like the real world version of the Incredibles baby, Jack, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God, it was so funny. And then he puts him back in and he's like, there's a good boy. And don't fuck up or I'm going to come and get you.
Yeah, there's a good lad.
JJ, explain to me how the baby's laser eyes can go off in the incubator and not fry the incubator container, but it can destroy a human being.
Well, I'm assuming since they've been doing this since, I think it was 1971, they said. So since the 70s that they figured out at least as many combinations of these power sets as they can. And so I'm assuming that the glass that they're inside the incubators with is built to withstand pretty much anything. Because that's what, it goes off, hits the glass, and then they're like, oh shit. And then they take him out to use him. So that would be my assumption, is they've just figured out what materials
Fair.
work.
I'll let the movies explain that away. That works for me.
Yeah. But yeah, this is when Black Noir's coming after him, though. And that you did hit that on the head where what's her name? The female protects Frenchie from Black Noir, and we think she's dead.
What is Black Noir? Because I know I read some stuff after I saw this that he definitely had a bigger role in the comics and seems to be kind of like a scary, kind of lewd superhero, but they didn't focus on him, it seems like, very much. Maybe they will in season 2.
I know I've seen like a preview of season 2 where he's got a pretty big scene, but I don't know that they'll get too much into him. And I haven't done too much research about him through the comics, but I do know that he has heightened senses. That's the only thing I remembered reading about.
And he can play the piano like a motherfucker.
Yeah, he can. I forgot about that at the party. So I don't know, but he is creepy, and he doesn't speak apparently, at least in the show. And he's obviously bought in 100% with the 7.
Clearly.
But he certainly gets his ass beat for a hot second by the female, and then comes back, and obviously you think she's dead, but she heals herself.
Well, yeah, that's where you learn that she can regenerate.
You find out she's seriously
she
really
goes
badass.
To save, right? Because he finds her in the alleyway. She goes after him to save Frenchie, right? And that was in 4, or was that in the previous episode?
Well, it was in the previous episode, but Frenchie lets her go. I don't remember where she was, but he lets her out.
He lets her go, and then Noir comes after Frenchie, and then she comes after Noir to save Frenchie.
Yeah, and he let her go forever before because they had just found out they were all burnt, so he let her go. That's right. He let her go because they figured out that Homelander knew they'd shut off all the accounts and all that stuff, so they were trying to disappear. And that's where Black Noir found Frenchie. He was trying to flee, get out. And then she saved him. And then you realize that she's now a Spice Girl.
Spice Girl. So after that's when the DP does officially go to Sandusky, and there's that weird scene with that girl that just wants to get off a freaky one with his gills or whatever.
Oh my God, yeah.
Such a weird scene.
That was weird to me.
You can tell he's not comfortable. He gets his full comeuppance. But what was weird to me was like the fact that she's got her hands in his gills, and it's like she's getting off because her hands are in his gills. And I don't know if it's just part of like her fucking with him, or it really was weird. Like I found
she was hurting him, right?
Yeah.
S&M.
Ah, there you go.
Some people get off on the hurting. Some people get off on the being hurted.
So she's the sadist.
And honestly, I wasn't okay. Like, I wasn't any more okay with him getting his than I was with him doing what he did to Starlight. Like, I was equally not okay with both things because he's sitting there going, no, stop. That hurts. Yeah. Stop what you're doing. And then she just forces it because you see how big of a weakness his gills are. And up until that point, he's never taken his shirt off. And so he always has them very protected.
That makes sense. Now I feel like an asshole. Because part of me was,
and you can see
like that's okay.
And then if you watch the progression, right? So if we stay on him, because this is all we have to talk about the deep for, is you stay on him, and you can see the progression of how the effect it has on his mental health.
Yeah.
You know, that and being shipped somewhere else, but like it fucks with him, and he goes through this like traumatic experience, and then he continues to relive the trauma. Because at one point he's sitting there and he's shaving his head and he's shaving all of his body, and he goes, what does he call it? Like, you fucking idiot, you're an idiot or whatever. And he's beating himself up over it. And so you can see that you take this guy who had clearly some pretty high self-confidence, and then all of a sudden he gets molested, if you will. And now you see the trauma and how it plays out, and he falls apart.
True. Another telling scene of Hollywood, right? Of the child star maybe if you want to go that direction. That's what I see with it, that falls apart as an adult or after, they're even a superstar for a while, and then their career takes a dive, and all of a
Well, I
sudden
think
they're in a
they
shitty place.
kind of show that in, is it this episode when they use the Mesmer, the telepathic guy, where he clearly he was like the child star in these movies, which is funny because the actor that plays him, isn't it Haley Joe?
Yep.
And he was like the child act. It was so funny. It was like ironic. I was like, oh, he like literally is playing him just as a superhero, basically. And so he went through that where he was like the superhero, had all these movies, everything. And now you see him, he's like just has a regular house. He's got dropped by Vought. He's trying to do anything to get his life back to that point, get close to his daughter. And the boys use him to try and gather more information. But then it's just interesting, the second that Homelander steps into the equation, he just seems to be like the godfather of superheroes. Then Mesmer does whatever he needs to do to get on what he perceives as Homelander's good side, who couldn't give two flying Fs about Mesmer. And I just thought that whole dichotomy was pretty interesting about like superheroes trying to make it in society, and then they're just like a regular person too.
Well, it goes back to what they're willing to do to buy it back, right? So for his help, what's the one dude's name from The Boys that works with child services? So they work out a way for Mesmer to be able to see his estranged daughter, to see them once a week, where he's had no relationship with his daughter. So they work it out and say, as long as you help us, you don't say anything about what we're doing, we'll continue to allow you to see your daughter. And Mesmer is like, nope, fuck that. She didn't really want to see me, so I am unwilling to put myself out when there's something to be gained. And now all of a sudden I see that I might be able to get back in with Vought. I might be able to get back into the spotlight. So I'm going to fuck over my family and give up my daughter, any possible relationship with her, to be able to try to have a conversation, right? To try to have a meeting. So he calls Homelander to be able to turn the boys in to say, here's these people, I'll give you their picture. And that's how they get burned.
Oh, that's right. He takes his phone. Oh, it's my phone.
Yeah. Yeah. And so he gave up everything and he got nothing in return.
Wow. He got a smushed face via Butcher.
Yeah.
In a very brutal death scene in the bathroom of the train station.
Oh, I forgot about that.
And he just beats him against the porcelain of the sink and then smiles as he walks away.
Just one more reason to love Butcher.
But one reason to not love Butcher in this episode, or at least want to know what y'all think, is this is when he goes to Raynor, the FBI, like deputy chief or whatever, some position close to that, and basically lays out all the evidence they have. They clearly have enough. She's ready to do everything they can. But the kicker that we all know, his sore spot with Homelander, and as we continue to learn in the show, Homelander is deemed to be basically untouchable. And then he just throws the deal off and then goes to lie. He goes back and lies to his crew saying, no, never had enough, wasn't going to work out. But in reality, to me, it seemed like he stopped the goodness of his group and their initiative based off his personal vendetta with Homelander, but on his side of things is why this all started in the beginning. So I'm not saying I don't disagree with what he did, but I also feel like you take the victories you can and then keep pressing forward. But wanted to know what you guys thought about that, because I thought he kind of did a dick move to his team.
From a Homelander perspective, for me, it's all about Butcher's hatred because of his wife. He thinks Homelander raped his wife and he's the reason that she's dead. Because in my mind, and I could be wrong, but when I think about they're giving you the chance to go after every other soup except for Homelander, that puts Homelander in a very precarious situation. You may never bring him down, but you're also going to put him in a spot where he can't be 100% himself, because he has to be even more careful than he has been. Because once all these others that are in the Seven and the other superheroes start getting outed for all of this bullshit, and Compound V is out there, the spotlight's going to be even more heavily on him. And we know how the media goes, in a more negative way. Now, SWAT's going to put their spin on it. But I think, to me, I would hope that if I were in Butcher's place, that I could put that personal piece aside and say, yeah, we'll get the rest of them, even though Homelander's the one that I want. And then there's because he ends up taking it anyway to save the team once they figure him out. And hindsight's 2020, and we jump to the end. If he had taken the deal at the beginning, before they found out about the terrorist soups, he could have gotten people opposed to getting outed, and now he's on the run and nobody's backing him at all. The only people that are safe are their families. And so, I don't know.
Well, besides that, as another massive plot point that started to develop here is, as in episodes 1 through 4, when Homelander made that speech with the airplane going down about getting Vought to be included in the military. Things are only heating up because I think this is when they find out that a terrorist has superpowers that they come across, and we start to kind of figure out, well, it's not just happenstance, because we knew that these were superheroes were created via babies a long time ago. But then you got your head swirling as a viewer, like, well, was this concocted many years ago, or how did this come about? It's just a sheer coincidence. But then we start to see the reality of the situation, that maybe there's more than meets the eye, that this convenient timing is truly convenient because of a few individuals.
Well, that doesn't happen until like episode 7, right? Because you still go through like Butcher's backstory and how he got involved, and you go back and you meet
Mallory,
right? So there's
when he talks to his sister, yeah.
Well, yeah, because they go back and they find the lady who actually created the boys that brought Butcher into the fold. Because in the beginning, he went to the FBI lady and he wanted the Mallory files. And that's all he left it as. And then you find out that Mallory is still alive. And you find out so they end up getting Frenchie, the girl, and I never remember the other dude's name.
Milk.
Yeah.
Milk.
Right. So they have them in a compound, and why can I not anybody's name? It's gone. The main dude, the guy, the one I hate.
Oh, Hughie.
Yeah. So, right, Hughie goes and says, I'm going to get him out. Butcher wants Butcher's help. Butcher won't help him. They go visit Mallory, and Mallory's saying you should just walk away before any more people get hurt. And Hughie's like, nope, fuck that. I'm going to go get my guys. And so he has the ingenious plan to get himself arrested too, with a retainer in his mouth. And then you get the comedy of Butcher being like, no, I'm gonna punch that, or what is
Mother's milk.
Yeah, mother's milk. Yeah, I know mother's milk's like, this is gonna hurt. I'm gonna punch that thing out of your face.
Yeah, you guys are skipping an entire episode though.
Okay, full disclosure, I got so sidetracked in this. I was watching the last 4 episodes, and I literally in my mind was having this internal discussion with myself about nature versus nurture, and it just went on for episodes. And I like legit think I missed an entire episode.
Well, the one we missed talking about was the one where Hughie gets a hotel room and takes Starlight back, and they have glowy-eyed sex.
Yeah, because her eyes glow when she comes.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like the peak, or like the climax of their relationship, right? Literally. And then figuratively as well, because after that, everything goes to hell, because they bust the boys. They figure out the boys thanks to Mesmer. And then all of a sudden they have this meeting in the Sevens room with Homelander basically threatening to kill Starlight in the middle of the room. And then you get Maeve, who is starting to find her moral compass again now that it's been gone, and she protects Starlight and then takes her under her wing, says, I'll basically be responsible for her. And then they have their conversation after the fact. And now all of a sudden Starlight's just pissed because she realized that Hughie's been using her. So they have that initial conversation in the park after the fact, and he's trying to explain everything. And then she's going to arrest his ass, and Butcher shoots her twice with that 50 cal sniper right in the chest so that he can get Hughie away. And then it moves into they end up getting captured, and Hughie, when he decides after the Mallory conversation, decides to go and talk to Annie and ask for help. And she's like, what the hell? And then he admits that she saved him just by being nice, because of the fact that Robin was killed, and now he's a human being again, as opposed to being, this revenge monster that was spiraling, that she saved him. And she tries to be Maeve after the conversation outside the boardroom and says, I don't care, and walks away. So
I do have a question for the two of you.
What's up?
It's going to take me a second to get there. Knowing full well that women fake orgasms all the time. I know you don't want to hear that, but what would you give to be able to have a telltale sign like her eyes glow or don't glow to be able to feel like you have adequately done your job?
I mean, look, it's always nice to know. But the problem is that there's a whole nother conundrum that comes with that. And that is, if her eyes don't glow or haven't started glowing, now you get into your own head. And this is a whole fucking different conversation. Shit, you could start a whole podcast on this shit. But like, for a man, you start getting into that, and I'm not all men, right? There's some men, it just doesn't matter. There's some situations we don't care. But in most situations where we care and we want to be that, you get in your own head. You'd be going and going, and you're like, fuck, her eyes haven't glowed yet. What the fuck am I doing wrong, right? And now it's this mental problem that just actually exacerbates the real issue of not being able to provide that amount of pleasure. So you probably wouldn't end up anyway. But it would be nice to know whether yay or nay, there was a nice orgasm involved at the end.
You wouldn't just ask, hey, could I do something different? The easiest solution ever. Like, hey, what could I do?
I hate to break it to you, but I don't think most people would ask.
Could you even imagine how much better that your sex lives would be if you would?
Well, for sure. Like, I'm not saying that it's a bad thing.
I think in their Hughie and Starlight situation, if you're kind of having like a one night stand, it's in your first time. I don't know a guy to JJ's point that's going to ask, hey, is there more that I can do? Because for you, just getting to that point is a huge win. And like, you're trying to not to mess the situation up or make it more awkward, or you don't really want to know if you sucked at having sex in that moment or whatever, because that would just destroy you. But I think the longer you go in that relationship, I lean more Casey on the side of, I wouldn't really want to know the tall tale sign, because if you know your partner and they're being honest with you and you know what they like and you've asked those questions in time, then you should know, well, hey, this is what I need to do for that person to make them feel that way. So that's, I guess, where I would lean. But if you're kind of a player, you're just dating or not dating, you're just having fun with a bunch of different people, you want to be that wizard in the bedroom. Would it be great to have that tall tale sign? Probably. But I mean, what a great conversation.
I've officially made Mattson uncomfortable to the umpth degree.
I would admit, in my head, I'm like, I wonder what our listeners are going to think about this very conversation. And maybe they're like, no, give me more of this.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm like, all right, let's do it.
As I say, we hear about it. We'll have to start the What's Our Verdict Sex podcast or something. And
well, to that point, it's people, money, sex, and power, or what is that phrase? I mean, it's on people's minds.
Absolutely.
Isn't it money, sex, drugs?
Money, sure.
Might be on our minds. I don't know. It's on everybody's minds, but yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question.
Anyway, sorry. Yeah, got us off track.
Interesting. But yeah, so that's Hughie and Starlight.
In that same episode, while that's happening, then things just start to get crazy, right? Because then Hughie's dad, he gets kidnapped. A-Train's there, and they got to concoct a plan to save him. And then I think as well in that episode, well, this is where we haven't really talked about Homelander really at all in these episodes. But then the facts start to come out about, well, where did he come from? Why is he who he is? Because he has that conversation, which I just thought was extremely enlightening with what's his name, Vogelbaum, if I said that correctly. Yep. And I think I just remember the end of that conversation where he says something to the extent of, "You are my greatest failure." And this is the guy that like essentially created him as his lab rat. And I thought Homelander was just going to lose it right there and just axe this guy, but he didn't. And that whole scene of it looked like Homelander just grew up in a room, like a 4x4 room with a door and people peering in at him. Just all this kind of stuff where he seemed like he was a lab rat, and probably a massive reason why he's a little high strung.
Well, and I think that conversation is honestly what made me start to question nature versus nurture, right? Because that conversation, he essentially is talking to his creator, his dad, for all intents and purposes. And the doctor is saying, we learned a lot from you. We learned a lot from you and what has happened and how you are. And you should have been in a home with a family where there was love. You shouldn't have been in a cold thing where I was the only, contact that you had. And so it begs the question, and maybe this is where my mind kind of went, is you see the conversation between Maeve and Starlight, where Maeve is saying, when I first started, right, I was just like you. I was this wide-eyed little, wanted to do good in the world, goody two-shoes. And that's all I cared about. And now look at me and I give a shit about nothing. And then she tells her, go be that goody two shoes, go be the good, because one of us has to. And so you see kind of I started to look at the difference, right? Starlight grew up in a home with a mom who, crazy as she may be, right? She was like a Hollywood mom in the worst sense, but it was still a home and there was still love. And Starlight is that I want to do good, versus you look at Homelander and you have to question, like, would he have been different had he been raised in a place where there was a very nurturing relationship that he would have to go back on, versus walking through a house where he had never been before with all of his shit and having to come up with stories about this family that he never had. And so I guess that's the parallel that I started to kind of go down a rabbit hole in, is would it have been any different?
It's a fair question. And I mean, it's one of those things where not only did he have this father figure that kept him locked in a room and experimented, whatever you want to call it, but his current mother figure is worse, because the only person he looks at it with his mother is Stillwell, who only gives a shit about him for the purpose of making money and getting her promotion, right?
Yeah.
So he doesn't have anybody that he in his brain cares about. Because the other part about that Vogelbaum conversation is you can tell that he cared what Vogelbaum thought, to the point that when he starts talking about, you're my biggest failure, I should have done things differently, he tries to rationalize it and say, yes, but I'm the greatest superhero there is. And that's when he says, you're my greatest failure. So it's really interesting to see that dichotomy of this human being that hates everyone and doesn't care about anything but himself, except for two people that either look at him as a failure because of how he's turned out, regardless of the successes that he's had, and then this other person he cares about who wants nothing to do with him except use him to move her agenda and her life and her wealth forward. So,
well, and can we just talk for a second about how well that scene and that conversation between Homelander and the Doctor was acted? Because Homelander, who is the true villain, right? I mean, I guess not but he is probably the most hated character on screen. And he, there were pieces of that conversation where his eyes were kind of glossy and you could tell that there was some really huge emotion. And there were part of that conversation where I just wanted to give him a hug to make here's this, you almost see him as a little kid, right? That's just saying, love me, want me, be proud of me. And you just want to give him a hug. And then you have in the same conversation, you want to punch him in the face or, worse, because he's an absolute prick. And so it like just to feel through and go through those emotions all in a 5-minute clip of television. It's incredible what they were able to make you feel as the viewer and make you feel for and kind of change your mind a little bit about Homelander and how he is and who he is. Like they make you feel for this man who you've hated. And so I was so impressed. It was such an incredible scene. And I think that will be pretty high on my list of really perfect scenes in cinematic history, at least for me.
It's a good one.
JJ, what do you say? The guy, Homelander's actor's name is Anthony Starr, if I remember correct. That dude, I mean, just for my homage to Homelander, as Casey kind of talked about, that scene kind of epitomizes his acting capabilities. But man, just throughout the show, the level of eeriness that he brings to the table, to the level of confidence, to the level of rage, to the level of confusion. I mean, so many different emotions that this actor was able to play in the character Homelander. For me, he was my favorite character in the show. He was what was most captivating to me, because in every scene, you just didn't know what kind of Homelander you were going to get. Were you going to get the calm, cool, collected, like politically correct Homelander? Or were you going to get like this behind the scenes, just straight up killer? Or was he going to be the one that silently stabbed you in the back? And that's what I loved about him in this show, is there was so much to his character and so much more we still don't even know. But at every scene, I just couldn't take my eyes off him, because I thought he was just going to blow a gasket and something like just absolutely crazy was going to happen. And a lot of times it did. And so that's what about the show never disappointed, that I've never seen a show where someone I expected to be so good and to be so high in a pedestal, but actually is so low, so full of faults, and is so human. And yet he's the greatest superhero ever. And that's why I think I really loved the season, because of the way Homelander was portrayed, especially.
Yeah, it's really good stuff. And I think the acting across the board in this show is pretty amazing, if I'm being honest. Like, there's really good performances across the board. Like, we made fun of Frenchie last week because he's always got the stories and he's kind of silly and over the top. But the actor that played him, that performance is very, very good as well. Because when he goes serious, you take him serious. When he's joking, you laugh at him. And I think that's, just across the board, the acting's very, very good. Can I just tell you how hilarious it was to watch Hughie shoot that that machine gun like covering Mother's Milk to go back to get the female, and he's just duck, 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 I'm sorry.
Well, and even before that entire scene was funny. Like when you talk about Frenchie telling stories, and Frenchie is in there telling Mother's Milk that it could be worse, and his story is something about how he was in a jail with his friend who was forced to run around in his own shit and then got sepsis and died, and then Mother's Milk is like, what the fuck are you talking about? And he's like, I was just trying to tell you it could be worse.
He's so sarcastic. He's like, thank you, Frenchie, for that uplifting, positive story. And he's like, I'm just saying it could be worse. And then shortly after, that's when Hughie comes in and they literally try to pry the thing out of his mouth, and then they punch it. That was great.
Well, and during their escape, right? So there is something important that happens here that we kind of glossed over. So during their escape, you've got, you have these three that are stuck behind this barrier. They're trying to get out. They're clearly not going to. And then all of a sudden, you just see this flash of bright light, and then all the bad guys are dead because Starlight came to save Hughie. And then, right, two seconds later, all of a sudden they're getting ready to leave. She's got a couple of them out, and then A-Train shows up. And here's A-Train, who had broken his leg. He was training with his brother to try to get better. He wasn't willing to wait, so he took more Compound V, knowing that it could kill him. And he shows up, and him and Starlight get into it, and they fight. And then the fight ends because he has a heart attack because the Compound V was killing him. So it's a cliffhanger, though, right? Because we don't know. Last that we know here, Starlight was trying to save him. She was doing chest compressions. She made a call to get help to come, and then we just don't know. So over under, does he live? Does he not live? And I guess we'll find out when the season starts.
Well, and I think it's a big thing to talk about too is Hughie's role in this whole thing, because it really puts him on the opposite spectrum of he's been running with Butcher and basically getting his training from Butcher to become, part of Butcher's crew. And he separates himself from Butcher when Butcher is going to leave the team and still go after Homelander. And Hughie decides to go after the team as opposed to, his own personal thing. So, but also in that moment where A-Train is dying, he gets on a phone and calls and has her call to save him. She was ready to let him die. She was just standing there, and Hughie said, save him. Can you do something? Call someone. And she says he's going to never stop chasing you.
And he said, yeah, I know.
And he says, I know. So at that point, that's his, here's who I am. I am a good person. I hate what the Supes are doing. And obviously he's probably going to continue to do everything he can to bring them down, but he's not willing to go to the extreme of pushing the button of a bomb up a dude's ass anymore.
Well, and I honestly think that Butcher had a hand in that, because one of the more funny parts to me was when Butcher takes them to this meeting of people who have been hurt by Supes.
Yeah.
And so it's like this AA meeting, and you see one of the guys that worked at Vought that initially was working with Starlight to come up with her new media presence. And he's sitting there saying how he fell in love with a Supe who was an icicle, or she froze. And so they were having sex. And when she orgasmed, she froze his dick off, which I think you both would rather have glowing eyes than freezing a dick off.
Yeah. Kind of attached.
But he's telling this story, but then he turns around and he's like, but I still love her. And is it wrong that I still love her? And so I think now Hughie is exposed to people who don't just want to kill, who have loved and who have gone through it and still care and have compassion for these people. And so I almost think Butcher started, not that Hughie wouldn't have gotten there, because I think he would have, but I also think Hughie was exposed to it through Butcher.
Yeah, but I don't think that's what Butcher wanted either.
No.
Side conversation, because when that moment happened, you guys are probably aware of the Darwin Awards, like that book of people dying horrifically. There's one where this couple obviously was having sex in like some park or something, and I guess it was started to rain, and then it was thundering. I don't know what they were doing out there. Maybe it was just happened out of nowhere, but the dude was inside the girl, and the girl got hit with a lightning bolt, and his junk mushroomed inside of her. And she was dead. He couldn't get out of her, and then a bear came and killed the guy. That's in the book.
Oh my God.
Let me just leave that right there.
I love so much that you know that.
That's terrible. JJ's face says it all. JJ, can you imagine? You're with Casey, you're doing your thing, having a great time. The lightning bolt comes, she's dead, but then you realize you can't remove yourself from her, and then all of a sudden you see a bear coming and you can't get away from the bear, and that's how you die.
I got nothing. I don't even like. I've been sitting here since you finished the initial, trying to think of anything to say, and I got nothing. I just wonder how long did he lay there, lodged in a dead woman, not able to get out before he was eaten by a bear? That's my question. Wow, what a story.
So on that note, maybe.
Sorry, that's what I thought of with that.
To Casey, what she was about to say, there might be something worse than a frozen, shattered penis.
Or a lifetime of disappointment when you don't know when the orgasm.
When you know that you didn't cause an orgasm.
Though I would rather be the woman than the man in that scenario.
Sure.
Okay, so moving on.
Yeah.
Back to the boys and more horrible deaths.
So at this point, I think is the point where you really start to round out this season. We've gotten to the point where the terrorist video allows them to void this CIA going after the heroes and puts the boys on the run completely. But Butcher goes after Homelander by going to Stillwell to figure out what his weakness is. Well, at this point, Stillwell meets, I don't even remember his name, the main guy at Vought, who played by the ever brilliant Giancarlo Esposito.
Oh, I'm excited he's in this.
I love it. He's just been in everything lately, and I love every moment of
Bad.
And the Mandalorian, and it's just so much stuff he's doing. So love him. He's in it for 2 seconds, and he just steals the scene. But he tells Stillwell, I'm grooming you for my position. She tells Homelander, who's basically made it happen because of his building, and then he admits to her that he's been running to all these terrorist groups to create people for them to fight so that they have to be in the military. And they go and have one of the most awkward sex scenes I've ever seen.
Oh, gosh.
Well, and can we talk for a second? Because before this happens, we're skipping over that Homelander figures out who Butcher is and why Butcher's coming after them.
Sure.
So the whole reason he goes to talk to the doctor, right, is because he figures out that it's about Butcher's wife. Mm-hmm. And then he goes to Stillwell. He goes to the doctor to say, what happened. So the doctor and Stillwell have similar stories. Both of them are saying, you impregnated Butcher's wife. The doctor says she died during childbirth. Stillwell, he goes to her and is having a conversation. She said, she had a miscarriage, right? It's unfortunate that she died in a miscarriage. And so he knows.
Yeah, that was after they had sex. He now knows.
Yeah, now he knows.
Lying. Again,
she lied
after
to me.
She promised not to.
And now it's but he knows who Butcher is. He knows why he's there.
Well, now he's on a rampage because now he knows they're lying. So now he's got to go figure out who's lying and why. So the next time you see him is in Stillwell's home, which I love the part where Butcher's just sitting there in the dark trying to figure out the weakness. And she says he has none, throwing weapons, every weapon in the planet's been known to him. And poor Butcher's fucked himself at this point because we as the audience know that Homelander is no longer going to give a shit about Stillwell because of the lie. But Butcher doesn't. So he thinks he's got this whole thing set up with the bomb strapped to her chest, and he's willing to take her out to hurt him in the same way that he thought Homelander hurt him.
And I love that Homelander's entrance into this is he gets to Stillwell's home, and because he no longer gives a shit, like the caring is just turned off and you just see it. And it kind of goes back to he is such a phenomenal actor. But now he comes down and he's carrying the baby, cooing at the baby because that's who she cares about and that's her weakness. Sets the baby down and then gets in this conversation with Butcher. And Butcher at some point is like, fuck it.
Yeah, well, that's after he fried. Okay, let's not skip over the coolest death scene in this entire show.
I was letting you have that.
Because I love when Homelander gives the kiss on the forehead and he explains to her that I know you lied to me and she's trying to save herself and he just melts her face through her eyeballs. Up close and personal. You got to sit there and watch her face literally melt from basically the inside. Oh, it's just brutal and it's personal and it's just grossly powerful. And I love every minute of that death scene. Every minute of it. It's beautiful.
Well, as then Butcher, like, naturally would think, oh, he's going to kill me next, right? So he goes to blow the house.
Fuck it.
Yeah, fuck it. Click.
And I do love the line that follows up that when Butcher wakes up and Homelander's wakey, wakey. And they're sitting in his...
You got to be glad that I saved you from that burning house.
Yeah.
And he's like, wake up. You're going to like this.
Oh, and I love he looks, he goes, I was going to let you die, but I like you. Like, that's the moment when you realize that Homelander knows everything that's happened, and he's that powerful that he just doesn't give a shit. I like you. He knows he's not going to quit, but now I got to introduce you and show you the fact that your wife's alive, and she had my kid willingly.
So now Butcher understands why she left.
Crazy. And that's
that's what I wanted clarification, right? Because she had sex with Homelander because she wanted to, not because she was raped.
Well, and Homelander cleared that up because he said, yeah, it was 3 times.
Well, and here's the thing about Homelander is in the situation, is he a piece of shit? Sure.
Is he an asshole? Absolutely.
But he's not a liar.
And he's not
except to the public.
And he's not he's not a molester. He never went after something in the show that didn't want him to.
Well, I mean, he did watch Stillwell through the walls
it.
Without her knowing. Or at least he didn't think she knew.
But he never, it was always her decision to let him come closer. She welcomed it, and then he reacted to it.
Absolutely. No, and I don't know that that's something that he would do, because I don't think he doesn't have that, because he's always, I mean, he's creepy. He said shit to Maeve that was really uncomfortable a couple times, like implying that they should and that they have. But for me, it was about the fact that he has no reason to lie to Butcher about it.
Yeah.
Butcher hates him. Butcher knows who he is. So when it comes to the point that he tells him no, it's 3 times, there's no reason for him to lie at that point.
Yeah. The only time he ever lied was to the media.
Yeah, to the public, so that he looks good. And that's the part
good at that.
Wow, oh yeah, he's very good at that. So that's why I looked at it and I was like, if I'm Butcher, now you have to realize that this happened for real. Like, she chose it, and then they disappeared her because she had Homelander's kid, and they needed that kid to go away.
Yeah. And if you looked at her reaction coming out of the house, her reaction was not one of fear until she saw Butcher's face.
Yeah.
So with Homelander finding them, it sounds like Homelander didn't know about this until very recently to that moment, from what I understood, because he never alluded to it all throughout this, that he knew he had a son until he obviously discovered it himself, right?
Yeah, he didn't know. The doctor was the first one that, because Homelander flat out says, like, I didn't think I could.
Yeah.
He had that honest shock, and then he told him he died, and he left it alone until he figured out the lie. And then he tells Stillwell that he went back to Vogelbaum and squeezed him for the truth. And that, to me,
what does that mean? Like, he almost killed the dude?
I'm assuming Vogelbaum's toast.
Oh, for sure.
Like, I believe Vogelbaum's
he's dead. Yeah, I thought that meant he's probably dead. But I was like, how does he get away with killing that dude? Because he was like Vought for a while, but I guess they'll scrape it under the rug or something.
Well, he killed the other executive at Vought that was about to take over. Yeah.
Well, and we all know, no matter what, when Giancarlo Esposito is playing a bad guy, he'll go to any extreme to make sure he wins. So he's not going to say shit to Homelander. He's going to accept him and be like, yep, this is my prize-winning superhero. Because at the end of the day, without Homelander, Vought takes a huge hit. So he doesn't care.
It's a poster child.
Yep.
Well, and with Homelander's son, they now are in a place to make a whole lot of money.
That's going to make such an interesting
story. What happens? I know I've seen some of the previews for season 2, but I need to go back and rewatch. But what is Butcher's motivation and the boys' motivation now? Did they just switch to taking down the whole superhero system? Because Butcher's core vendetta is now kind of flipped totally on its head, but he could still point a finger at and still be extremely pissed off at Homelander. But Homelander kind of saved his life, and it seemed like his wife basically turned on him. I just don't know where he kind of goes, but clearly there's a lot more of the story to be told.
Sure.
I personally don't think it changes for Butcher. I think Butcher has reworked his life and has made up his mind that soups are bad, and I think that's now his way of life. I don't think seeing your wife and saying, "Okay, she made a shitty choice," I don't think that erases everything that the soups are to him. And let's not forget, he was trained by Mallory, who also is anti-soup. So he's not just carrying it for himself. He's carrying it for whoever came and blew up Mallory's family. And, Vought is the devil, and it might change from the soups themselves to Vought the corporation. But I don't think his driving force changes.
To me, it would be worse, because now Homelander, sure, he showed that there was some deception that even Homelander didn't know about, and Homelander didn't do the things that he thought he did. But now Homelander saved his life in order to rub his nose in the fact that you were wrong and you just wasted your life. If anything, I'm more committed to bringing the asshole down than I was before.
Well, and Vought, who been hiding his wife.
Yeah.
I guess I'm really curious to see how he gets away from Homelander, or if Homelander's just so arrogant it knows like I'll kill this dude whenever I want, but then maybe that comes back to bite him in the butt later. But because that aspect of it, you're like, well, Homelander could just show up at any moment and be like, all right, I'm done having fun with you.
Here's my question though, like who's to say Homelander stays with Vought?
True.
Well, according to the previews I've seen, at least for part of it, he is.
Yeah.
They bring in a new team member, who I'm thoroughly stoked about in Stormfront, especially with Aya Cash playing her, and I cannot wait to see her play this crazy ass, as powerful as Homelander character who's actually, they've turned into this media darling, and in the comics was very racist. So I'm interested to see how they play that part of that character, if they even go down that road. But in the comics, Stormfront is extreme racist, so it should add some interesting dynamic to it.
The show's only gonna get more grit your teeth.
Yeah.
Well, and to be honest, like this show doesn't hide from hard topics.
Nope.
It hasn't the first season. I have no doubt that it won't the second season. And so I don't think that they're going to shy away from big topics.
Well, that's a good point, because if they did, then I don't think we would like it as much, because it seems to be consensus why we all have liked this show.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and I think if it did, it would raise the question on why they did.
Yeah.
And so I mean, stick to the real storyline, right?
All right.
I'm excited.
Yeah,
It's
so let's
close. We got like what, a week and a half until the first 3 come out.
Yep, week and a half.
Yeah, buddy.
All right, well, let's rate the first season. Let's start with Casey.
1 through, okay, remind me.
0 through 5. 0 being hot garbage, 5 being a beautiful scene with a doctor and Homelander.
No pressure.
None.
Or influence. I would say probably a 4.5. It is it's such a celebration of the worst qualities in almost every person, with like silver linings around all of them. And I adored it. I hated the characters. I love the characters. I was hopeful and I was sad and I cried when the lobster died after making his first friend. But I mean, I can't, the music and the acting and the filmography and I mean, the special effects just are unmatched in anything I've ever seen. So I would say 4.5. I think there are a couple of things I would have done. Like, I didn't love Elizabeth Shue in the role. I think they could have found somebody better to fill that role. But I mean, if that's my biggest pet peeve about it.
Sure. I'll go. I thoroughly enjoyed the show. I love everything about it. The acting's amazing. The story's great. The way that they lean into the difficult issues and they don't back away from it. We've talked about so many things over the last couple episodes of our podcast about this show. I don't need to say too much more. There were a couple things that bothered me. Mainly, I wish they would have riddled more of the backstories, at least for like Homelander. Like, I love what we see. You see like 1 or 2 comments early on that, and then you start to realize how shitty he is, and then you get a pretty good chunk of it at the end. And I think what we get at the end is fine. I just think it would have been cool to have it littered throughout the 8 episodes, not just a little bit in the beginning and then dumped on you in the last 2. I think some little tiny hints that don't give anything away throughout would have kept me even more engaged. Kind of like what Casey said, you start to feel for him. I think maybe starting to feel for him a little bit earlier for me would have maybe elevated it a little. I don't know for sure, but that's what my brain tells me. So it's little tiny things I'm nitpicking at this point for a TV show, but I'm also going to give it a 4.5 because I thoroughly enjoyed this show. Mattson.
All right. Yeah, so I think I have a little bit of a different viewpoint than you, JJ. I like that they gave me more of Homelander later at the end, because I feel like if I knew more at the beginning, would I have viewed him as this manipulative, creepy, secretive, politically correct, powerful individual if I'd known more up front? I don't know. To your answer as well, I don't know, but I like that I found out more later, because it just kept me glued to my screen, because I didn't know. I wanted to know what it was about him, but when it came and I did learn more about him, it was like, okay, it makes sense. I liked where it fell for me, because it was almost like a suspenseful, like cliffhanger reveal that I was waiting for, and I like that they made me wait. And I've been sitting here as you guys have been giving a ratings for a standalone season. It's hard for me to find anything I don't like about this season. I like the acting. I got to be honest, I like all the actors. I like the character development. I like the plot. I like the music. music. I like the visual. I mean, the special effects. I mean, come on. One of the greatest opening special effects scenes I think you'll see in cinema or TV. I mean, it was amazing. And then they ended it with one of the greatest death scenes, as you talked about, JG, that we're ever going to see. And the emotion behind both of those events really is kind of two bookends for what season 1 was. So I think you're anticipating the number that I'm going to give. It's perfect for me. It is a 5. I don't have a reason to not give it a 5 in my viewpoint. Now, if we were grading this when we get through all the seasons, that'll be the true mark. Can I carry that along into season 2 and wherever we go with this? Because my TV show barometer is always Breaking Bad, because after the first couple episodes, it never took its foot off the pedal. And I'm excited to see, can the boys, in my eyes, stay in that regard. But for season 1, they get a 5. Phenomenal job.
Awesome. Yeah. So great ratings for the show. Highly recommend. Go out and check it out if you haven't already, especially with season 2 coming out in less than 2 weeks. At least the first 3 episodes. It does have an interesting release schedule, which is, we'll see how it goes. Like Casey said last week, you'll be able to digest 1 episode at a time after the first 3. And of course, keep an eye out because we'll be for sure reviewing those as well.
Oh, yeah.
As we go. So excited to see those. Mattson, why don't you let everybody know where they can find us?
Yeah, check us out on our YouTube channel, What's Our Verdict? The same for our social media channels, Facebook and Twitter, Instagram. And then check us out on Spotify, Apple, and wherever else you listen to good podcasts. We're around, pushing out a lot of great content, got a lot of great movies and some further TV shows coming up, like The Mandalorian here shortly. We're excited for you guys to come listen, come chime in, and yeah.
Definitely. Thanks, Mattson. Also, don't forget to go check out our website where you can send us feedback and just communicate pretty openly. We got some great comments coming in from people now. You can also listen to the episodes there as well. So go check that out. We'd love to have you visit and reach out. Finally, thanks, Casey, for joining us for both of these episodes.
Yeah, Casey.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll have you on for season 2.
Great to have a perspective that is not carrying a dick.
That's fair.
Though mentally, I probably am more of a dick and less of a vagina.
That's probably very true.
But in all seriousness, no, I really appreciate a lot of what you talked about from like the Me Too movement, especially in our past episode. Brought a great perspective there.
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to it in season 2 because one thing the only thing I've read about it is that the female characters are very much in the front. So excited to have your perspective there as well, because I think that's great. So, all right. Well, thanks for joining us. That's our verdict. And we'll catch you on the next one.
Bye.